My man, Mike Johnson.
How are you doing?
How you doing, man?
I'm doing awesome.
I haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah, well, we've been cooped up and kind of like quarantined, but other than that, it's time to get out and make life happen.
Last time I saw you, you didn't have that beard, man. Tell me about that beard. Why did you decide to do it?
Laziness.
Is it a statement? It's not a statement.
It's just something where during your course of your life, you're always kind of like wondering, I got to give this a try and see what it's like. And actually, the response with women's been pretty awesome, so
Cool.
I think it's going to stay for a while.
That's it, man. You probably know how to cut down a tree and everything, huh?
I knew how to do that way a long time ago. But
Right. You were already doing that back in the day, man. That's really cool, man. So how's this quarantine been for you, man? I've talked to a lot of people about it, and people tell me, hey, either they're like, hey, no problem, it's affecting me. It's affected everybody, obviously. But then some people are like, hey, you know what? I just changed my mind about this. I quit doing this. I started doing that. And I'm a total different person now, it seems, because I had a break that I didn't expect to have, and now I have it. How was it for you?
I've had an awesome time.
Yeah? That's great.
Just made the best of it, fortunately with some of the surplus, or not the surplus, but the stimulus and everything that's come across, that's helped out. But in the process also, it's given me the opportunity to start another online business, start moving forward with music again, get involved with that. And that's my passion. So, some people, may look at it as a real downfall. I just took advantage of the whole situation, and I just used the time to be able to move forward and start accomplishing things that I wanted to accomplish.
Everybody has a long list of things that, hey, yeah, I'll get to that at some point. And I think probably everybody's by 50% done with it now, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
So music. I know that you actually were in a band with a musician that I'm been in bands with before, Buster Grant.
Yes.
So tell me about that. How was that back? When was it? What year? I want to hear it all, man. Talk to me.
Well, it's really kind of a funny story. This will probably be the first time anybody ever hears this, but it ended up to where...
True talk. Cheers.
True talk. Anyways, I don't remember if it was 84. I think it was 85. But it ended up to where Buster was in this one band, Wizard, at the time. And it just so happened that his mom and him and his brothers, they just lived down the street from where I was living with my mother and stepfather at the time. And it ended up to where, as neighborhood kids, we all kind of like got together. We all hung out and everything. And he knew that I played keyboards. He also knew that I played guitar, but he was always contemplating as far as bringing keyboards into the band Wizard. I kept telling him, I said, what Wizard's doing just really isn't my forte. I'm really not into that. It was more thrash metal in a sense. And anyways, what ended up happening was I had moved out and gotten a house down the street in another subdivision about a mile and a half away, and had another band going where ultimately we were practicing inside the garage. Well, anyways, one day it ended up to where there was a fallout. It ended up to where the drummer was dragging on a particular song, and it ended up to where what I was doing was I was trying to pick the song up without just stopping the song and saying, hey, look, this is just dragging. We need to start all over. Anyways, it ended up to where he got really upset about what I was doing, trying to pick the song up, because literally it was almost halftime of what it should have been.
Wow, I hate
and,
that.
It literally, he goes, if it wasn't for your sequencer, you wouldn't have any timing at all. And he got really pissed, and everybody just kind of jumped up, got out of there. And anyways, what ended up happening was the next day they all came over, and the band was moving all the equipment out of the garage. Well, as they were moving the equipment out of the garage, this was just like a weird dream. It ended up to where... You have to imagine the garage door opens, the band's moving the equipment out, and as soon as they're moving the equipment out, Buster is getting out of a car across the street, and there's like a couple other guys who are sitting there, and all of a sudden, while they're moving the equipment out, here's this other group that Buster has moving the equipment
Buster
in.
Currently, this is what that guy Buster looks like?
Yeah, so... Okay. He had them moving the equipment in, and I looked at him and I said, what's going on here? And he says... Exact words. He goes, shut the fuck up. We got a gig in 2 weeks.
Damn. So you just get going, get started. What I like to introduce. That's a great story. I bet you there's pictures out there.
It gets longer.
We'll have to get into that. But I first want to show pictures. Do you think there'll be pictures somewhere out there on the internet of you guys, the band?
I have no idea.
So I'd like to introduce Danny. Danny, my friend Danny Leal is going to be helping us with doing all the research. So we want to bring him in and help us look it up.
What was the name of that band?
Ritual. But
Ritual.
Anyways, I'll continue with this story because it's quite interesting. The first gig, it ended up to where We ended up learning. It was probably something like 5 songs that we wrote really quick, and we were like the opening band for 2 other bands over in the Cameo Theater. Well, I had never been in the Cameo Theater before, and when you walk in there and there's like no seating or anything, you think, well, it's not that big, whatever. You can't fathom how many people get inside the place. But it ended up to where after sound check, we were all in the back while they open up the doors and they're letting people in. Now, how we were going to start this out was I was going to come out, start into a keyboard solo. After going into the keyboard solo, at the end of it, the band was going to come on, the lights were going to break on, and all of a sudden we were going to go into the first song. Well, it ended up to where the guy Tommy Achilles, that's another interesting story. It was one of the first gigs he had done. They used to be what was called the Texas Dance Hall out on 281. And his father was closing down the place. Well, he had taken the sound system out of it. His father had given that to him, and he was first time using the sound system at this show. So he was more of a country boy, He had never seen anything like this before. Uh-oh. But he comes back to the back of the dressing room.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, he comes back to the back of the dressing room and he goes, it's time for you all to go on. And so, because I'm the one who's going to start the show, it ends up to where I start walking out there. Well, it's pitch black and there's so much gear and everything all over the stage that literally got a flashlight on the ground just zigzagging across the cables and getting through the equipment like a maze to get out in front of the keyboard. But when I got out there, it was very surrealistic. Jason Lee Tipton, who was a DJ for Kiss at the time, was standing up there at the microphone. And there's a spotlight coming down, and that's the only thing you saw. It was very surrealistic. All I saw was the back of Jason Lee Tipton with a spotlight coming down, and everything else was pitch black. You saw absolutely nothing else. Cool. There was no house lights or anything inside the place, so you saw absolutely nothing, just what the spotlight was hitting. So anyways, he's standing up there at the microphone, and he is literally shaking like a leaf, and he's just like sitting there with this piece of paper, and I'm sitting there just as calm as can be going, what is he so nervous about? And I just didn't get it. But anyways, when he got to the end of his announcements and everything, would you please welcome Ritual? And the spotlight comes over and it hits me. Well, still at this point, I feel like I'm just in a room all by myself, pitch black, nobody's there or anything. I go through the keyboard solo. When I get to the end of the solo, the lights come on, the band breaks on. I turn around and I looked and I was going, oh my God, if the fire marshal were here, they'd actually shut this place down. It was packed in there where literally I had never seen a building that packed before. But immediately as we were going into the first song, all of a sudden it got crazy where people started jumping up on stage. They started running towards us, and I freaked out. And I turned around and I was starting to run.
No security, obviously, I guess.
Well,
or not enough.
I didn't know. It ended up to where I turned around and I started running out towards the back of the stage because I had no idea what was going on. And then all of a sudden I didn't realize there was security standing off to the side of the stage. And they came out there and they started slamming everybody back off the stage. Well, because it was so dense and packed, they weren't going to hit the floor. So they started landing on everybody's hands. And all of a sudden it became crowd surfing, just throughout the entire place. Well, other people saw it and go, hey, that's cool. So they started jumping up on the stage, doing backflips off of it. And I mean, the whole thing just became mayhem as far as what was going on. But I thought, oh my God, what have I got myself into?
This is your first gig.
Yeah, this is the first gig.
Oh, that's perfect.
And so it ended up to where, I thought, well, maybe it's just San Antonio. Maybe it was just Buster's friends, whatever. I didn't know what the deal was. But no, it just ended up to where it was us solely. They never did it for any other band. And then I thought, well, maybe it was just San Antonio. But every other place that we went, the same chaos and mayhem broke out.
That's crazy.
And it was just something to
so
where...
what was it? The music?
It was the energy. It was the energy. Yeah. It was the energy of the music.
Well, Ritual already sounds like it's going to be something macabre.
It's something to where it was. If you actually look up the definition of ritual, what it means is it's a repetition of acts as in song or dance.
Right.
And that's exactly what it was. So a lot of people, they would get some evil connotation behind it. Now, some of the things probably did as far as the banner and everything. Yeah,
so did you find a picture of the band?
Yeah, I probably couldn't find anything.
Oh, it's going to have to be a specialty. Maybe we'll put it after the show. I know Buster's got a couple of pictures I've seen.
Yeah, I've got a few also. I know that they did something heavy metal. I don't know. So it was kind of like Hall of Fame type thing in San Antonio.
That's what I was telling you.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Here last year at the Texas Institute of Cultures.
Right, that's what I was referring to. But it ended up to where they had pictures and they were talking about Ritual back then. Now, the interesting thing about it was the success of the band. I mean, it was so crazy what was happening in that time. We were were only together 8 or 9 months because we were extremely young at the time. The guitarist and bass player, they were only in high school, seniors. I was probably the oldest one that was 25 at the time. Buster was probably about 23.
I was just about to ask you how old you were at that time. Yeah, 25.
But we all still looked like little kids, whatever. But everything was happening so fast for us. Joe Anthony was convinced we were the next big thing out of the city. And so we were constantly going into the studio, putting out things, but he was always getting the master tapes. And, it was we were accustomed to us being played after 10 o'clock at night because that's when other bands from around Texas were being played and, trying to push them. And so it was like no big deal. It's like, yeah, we're going to get played every single night after that point. But he really believed in us. And it got to the point to where I'll never forget one time we went in and we recorded the song, Don't Stop Your Dreaming. And I'm driving around one day. It was in the middle of the afternoon. And I'm someplace over by Northeast Stadium. And this song comes on the radio. And I'm sitting there going, God, I know who this band is. I just can't figure out who it is. And it got to the very end of the song where all of a sudden it snapped and I'm going, oh my God, that was us. I didn't even realize it was us. And the reason was because I never anticipated us being played during the middle of the day.
That's crazy.
And
they don't do that anymore.
No, they don't. And so it ended up to where because of the simulcast show that Joe Anthony had, literally we had records offers coming in from Germany. We're coming in from all over the world, and we were just like I said, things were happening so fast. I had gone to NAMM that year out in Anaheim. And at the time, literally, it was like all these musicians from all over the world. They knew who I was coming up and talking to me. And I was just kind of like, how would you even know we don't even have anything out or anything of this nature?
Crazy.
And it was because of underground magazines.
This is pre-internet, obviously. So how did people find out? How did that work
There was
out?
a network of underground kind of like reporters or people who went out to different shows.
Yeah.
And they wrote articles and they sent it off to these different people with pictures and everything. And it just got to the point where we were in magazines all over the place. And I didn't realize any of this stuff. And so when I got to LA and people are hanging out limousines screaming at me, knew who I was, things. And I thought, this is crazy. How did they even know? And then, in San Antonio, it was like even going into a restaurant, going into the mall, anything of that nature. People were always stopping you, or you'd walk into a restaurant, even the parents were going, that's them. And it's kind of like, this is weird. I mean, we were so young and just felt like we were being put into a box under a microscope.
Oh,
it was something to where didn't really like the feeling of it.
So would you say then, I mean, I'm younger, so I didn't really come of age, so to speak, in the 80s, for example, which I wish I did because I hear all kinds of stories about them. And everybody just get that look in their eye and they're gone for a couple of minutes, back in those days. So do you think people were more into following the bands and following the music because there was less things to do, so to speak? No internet, no phones, it was not as easy to there's not as many people that were DJs. Like now it seems like anybody could be a DJ. So it's like there was no option. It was mainly the guitar or what else was there to be cool besides sports?
That's hard to answer. I'm sure a lot of that plays into it, but and of course, nowadays, if you have a band, it's much easier to promote because of YouTube, things of that nature, the internet.
Definitely.
But back then, it was just something to where, radio was more popular. That was the main form of where you got your music. Nowadays, it's kind of like you said, you could go to Sirius XM, you could go to all these different formats. Walkman started coming out, things of that nature, where people started drifting away from the radio stations. In fact, all the DJs, most of them were my good friends of mine. They still are, but it ended up to where a lot of them lost their jobs mainly because it ended up to where with all these different venues of where people get their music or listen to different things, radio wasn't that popular anymore, and they just weren't pulling in the advertisers anymore. The advertisers couldn't justify saying, look, everybody else is listening on this or that, and so we can't justify paying you as much as we paid you before in the past because people aren't listening to you as much as they used to. So all these DJs who had these big contracts, getting paid quite a bit of money, the radio stations pretty much said, you know what, we can't afford to renew your contract anymore. And then unfortunately, companies like Time Warner came in, and Time Warner, I really think, screwed up the whole music industry. And ultimately, what they were doing was everything was being automated, where all the radio stations, the music was being programmed out of Phoenix. And
We all know about that.
it was something to where it wasn't, this is why the younger generation now, it's like they don't even like the music that was coming out that was being forced down them. They go back and they listen to bands like Aerosmith, AC/DC, things
Yep.
of that nature. And they're going, well, yeah, this
When,
was
when
much
did that
better
change?
music.
85, 86, 7?
Oh, no, it was probably mid 90s where it all started changing. But yeah, that's when people had more options and everything started drifting away.
Around the time of Napster and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
So let's fast forward to now, just to, I guess, close out on the music. What's going on now? I mean, I knew I was a musician too, and trying to make it in the world, so to speak, as an original artist back when Napster came out.
Uh-huh.
And I know that when I downloaded that first song, I just realized that, wow, if I'm downloading a song for free, where's this going? We are done. I mean, how are we going to make money if not even us can pay for it or are not paying for it?
That's a very good question. I mean, it used to be back in the day when you talk about concerts, it was cheap to go to concerts. I mean, some of the best shows I went to literally, yes, inside the municipal auditorium, still to this day, after the thousands of concerts I've seen, was still one of the best shows, and it ended up to where it was $6 to see it.
Nice.
Talking about Rod Stewart with Blue Oyster Cult opening, $6. It was just everything was really cheap. Now, their whole thing back then was that where they made the money, touring was essentially not to make money. Touring was done to promote the product. And so it ended up to where everything that was being spent on the tour, of course, they weren't as elaborate back then, but ultimately it ended up to where it was all a write-off. They weren't there to make money. So what they were doing was with the T-shirt, the merchandise, the product, the album, or anything of that nature, people would go see the show. They'd fall in love or, become fans of the band, and then they'd go buy the product. Now, when it came into the digital download aspect, this screwed the bands big time because just like what you're talking about, everybody started stealing the music. Nobody could make any money off of it. Nobody buys CDs anymore. They're still out there, but they just don't buy them. And so when it comes to downloading, people have found other ways to get around it as far as like if you want something. I mean,
Right.
I can tell you different methods also.
Sure.
I'm guilty,
Peer.
everyone's guilty. But ultimately what ended up happening in that sense was the bands were no longer making money off the product. And so what they had to do was they had to up the shows. Now, the cost of the shows and everything, and this is why the tickets for concerts have gotten so damn expensive, is because it ends up to where
You gotta make up.
That's where the band is making the money, is
And the
touring.
merchandise and that kind of stuff.
Exactly. They don't make it off the product anymore. So there was a big downfall with that when music went digital. It screwed the bands.
What do you think of the quality? Is the quality less because it's digital? A lot of people seem to think so.
People debate that, and I'm kind of. It's nice not to hear the hissing and the popping, but
Right.
but other than that, I can listen to some vinyl and go, yeah, it is more dynamic than the actual CD. So, but I think it's real close, actually. It's certain recordings. It's kind of like this seemed like it was meant to be digital, and others are kind of like this seemed to be where it was like better on vinyl.
A little more warm,
Yeah,
more
yeah.
personal, it seemed.
Analog.
Well, I mean, for me personally, it seems that the digital format doesn't. Sometimes maybe it's because of the new stereos, they don't make them like they used to, so to speak. So they don't rumble or they don't. The bass is not as deep
Right.
as before.
Well, it depends on the scale of the stereo that
Well,
you
exactly.
have.
True. So maybe I didn't have a badass Pioneer like most people did when they were growing up. So I guess that has something to do with it. So where do the labels fit into all of this? Are they still relevant or are they about to be extinct? What do you think?
Well, it's hard to say. I do believe that things are going to change drastically here for the good for everybody because in the sense of what I was talking about earlier, how Time Warner, kind of took over the music industry and was dictating and forcing everybody to like this music and this is all you're going to get. And of course, there was a wicked agenda, everything behind all of that. But ultimately, it ended up to where I think what it's going to go back to is that people are hungry for great music again. And in that sense, when this goes away, as far as like Time Warner not being in control anymore and dictating as far as what you have to listen to, there's going to be other ways for musicians to like say, you know what, I know that I'm putting out something great that people really like. And now there's workarounds where we can actually make it happen ourselves. We don't have to rely on a record company. And, you know, that's part of the benefit as far as the digital realm, because you don't need somebody to go out and press it or, you know, sell it. Somebody could just download it. You just got to market it.
That famous advance.
Yeah, so I do
start the opposite. Start building it up right from the get go at the camp instead of getting 250. I have $1,000,000. Go make a record. Mm-hmm. Now you owe it.
Now, I do believe, you know, they need to do something as far as making it more secure for the band itself, as far as how you're able to obtain the music so it can't be stolen as easy. But like right now, you know, I can talk to you about this later on, you know. So, I was doing something. I was running a sound for a rodeo for 10 years. And it ended up to where, you know, the music and everything that I was having to pull in, try to keep it fresh and new and everything, it was just too expensive to go out there and be buying all these new songs and everything. So, you know, I found a way to kind of get around it because everybody expected me to pull it out of my pocket. And it was like, look, you all got like this list that you want me to go out and pull, but you don't understand the cost of all of this.
Oh, yeah.
And so, you know, because they weren't willing to do it, I had to find another way around it.
Wow.
No, I won't say it on here.
Of course, no. We don't want any trouble. Did you hear that, Big Brother? We don't want any trouble.
I don't care about Big Brother.
But we do want a little more trouble with other things, man. I mean, one of the reasons why I definitely wanted to have you on the show is to talk about some of the things that are going on behind the scenes, mm-hmm. and that people are always contentious about and wondering, is this going on? Is this not going on? This is just conspiracy theory, this is true, but a lot of that stuff has been proven over time, and I'm a believer because I've done my own research mm-hmm. to know that there's a lot of stuff that people could not believe that is happening.
That's true,
and I think that's the problem. People think I don't believe that could happen, so they're saying my opinion is that based on my moral compass, I don't think somebody else would do that. But what I tell them is that you don't understand these people. They're not like you. They don't think like you. You know, a lot of people are more powerful. So when you get to a certain power strata, then what do you do from there? You're not thinking the same way. The game changes. The reason why people got there, they're a different type of people. Would you say that there's people that are up in the top, the 1%, like many people just simplify it by saying that? How are they different than the regular Joe on the street?
Well, you could go back to the beginning of time to really kind of go through this whole thing. You know, I'm not going to go back through that. We just don't have time. Yeah. You know, this is 20 years of research on my part. But even before that 20 years, it ended up to where there was just like one of these. I talked to you about this earlier, you know, that there's what's called Briggs-Myers personality traits. There's 16 of them. The rarest one is an INFJ. I am an INFJ. I do know a couple of others, but it's extremely rare. We're less than 1% of the entire population. And so a lot of people don't get us. We think differently than a lot of other people. But I was always somebody who was very inquisitive at a very young age. You know, if people would do certain things, and I would just kind of sit back and go, what the hell is wrong with these people? I mean, it's just flippant to me as far as what they do, how they think. And I thought, you know, the way I'm thinking just seems so normal, natural, logical.
Yeah.
And you know, the other things that people were doing was just so illogical. You know, I'll give you an example. You know, one thing that really never hit me was, you know, when people are watching sports on TV and all of a sudden they get really excited or they get mad, and so they're sitting there standing up and they're screaming at a TV, and you know, and I don't know what they're expecting, some response like the TV's going to go, yeah, I'm with you on that. You
right.
know, it's just
I feel the same way, man. I always felt it was just a waste of, like, what are you doing? The TV doesn't know, or the players don't know that you're cheering or not cheering for them, or whatever you're doing.
So why are you doing it, and why are you allowing it to work you up the way that it is? But you know, that's a really good point, kind of leading into other things, that it ends up to where how people could become so emotionally charged by things they see off of TV. Now, the interesting thing is that when they become emotionally charged about something, what happens is critical thinking goes right out the door. In other words, emotions make their decisions, not logic or reasoning. And so a lot of the things where we've kind of led up to this point was it ended up to where through brainwashing, other things of that nature, is that people got to the point to where they react on their emotions. So even when you're watching the news, if you're really paying attention to the news, they're using words like, well, it is alleged, it's suspected, or a possibility. But what they do is the newscasters, they're not even reporters as far as like investigative reporters anymore. They're drama majors. And they sit there, and when they're talking about their stuff, they're adding a lot of drama into it. And they're doing all this stuff. And what happens is that people aren't catching these key words that they're throwing in there, so they don't get sued. Where they say alleged. But when they're throwing the drama in on top of it, people are thinking it's true.
Right.
But no, listen to what they're actually saying.
It's implied that because of the tone of the voice and the severity of the sound in the background. And maybe
exactly, the drama that's attached to it. And so they get caught up in that drama. And when they got caught up in that drama and the emotional buttons are pushed, it's just like, one of the things that they do all the time to push people's buttons. And you hear it quite often all the time now, as it ends up to where the deep state is always throwing out there, racism. Why did they throw that out there? Because it's an emotionally charged word. When they throw that word out there, somehow it triggers people's emotions. They know this, and so once they trigger people's emotions, they're no longer logically thinking, that they're raising their ire in the people that are actually watching, and then they become triggered, and once they become triggered, they're easy to manipulate.
Yeah. I think a lot of people have seen those videos of the newscaster talking, and then they put another screen of another news station in another city saying the exact same thing. And then they start adding.
It's the echo chamber.
It's the echo chamber of the same specific script.
Mm-hmm. They get their talking points 4 o'clock every single morning, and they're told what to say. And so
when someone says, I just don't believe the government is organized enough to make these things happen, what would you say to that? I mean, what I would say to them is also, it's not just the government, but there's PACs. There's NGOs, non-government organizations, governmental organizations that are out there. There's institutes. There's all these different organizations bankrolled by different people.
Yes.
That are think tanks to make this happen.
Well, I'll kind of go back through a little history, which will kind of explain during our lifetime what has gone on. This is kind of like something that's gone on since the beginning of time, but it's really accelerated in the last several decades. But anyways, one of the things that I was going to talk about when you kind of refresh my memory, you were just talking about, well, I'm going to go back because I was talking about as far as the history. When you were talking about, the possibility, I remember where we were now, you're asking me as far as, how is it possible for people to say certain things? Could this have been planned? Things of that nature. What I would tell people to do is you can find numerous videos. You can actually find other evidence if you go research Operation Mockingbird. Now,
right.
Operation Mockingbird was back in the 50s, and there's testimonies in Congress where even they were talking about and question at this particular time the CIA, and they were admitting to the whole thing as far as, yes, they do use the media to manipulate and also put different thoughts into people's minds. In fact, I don't know if you're probably too young to know this but back in the 60s, it ended up to where every single night, whenever every prime station was signing off, they would play the national anthem.
I remember that.
And you can go back on YouTube and find videos on this, and subliminal messages were actually put into that. And so if you go back into it, you will see that as the words were scrolling across while they were doing the national anthem, they would have the words to the national anthem, but there was other words scrolling behind those words. And,
really?
And it was something...
like subliminal messages?
Yes, it was subliminal messages. And ultimately, a lot of those messages were, the government is God. Things of this nature were actually put in there. You can go pull it up on YouTube and watch this.
Let's try that.
And
How about that, Danny? I think you got.
So even back then, it was going on. It used to be where they were testing things out also. As
Well,
far
this
as
was in the 50s and 60s, right?
well, 60s is when they were really like pushing this national anthem thing, you know. But, we never thought anything of it. But yes, it was subliminal, something you didn't actually see, but it was being implanted in your mind. You go back also during that time, the movie theaters, what they were doing was they were actually throwing things in there in the screen or the movie to where it was like, you want popcorn, you want Coke, and just little messages like that so that it would instill people to get up and say, you know what, for some reason, I just got to go get me a Coke.
So,
I got to get some popcorn.
As far as I know, the subliminal message looks, it's just you're looking at the screen and there's a quick flash with words on them, and it just very quickly to where almost imperceptible, but yet your subconscious is picking it up.
Exactly. And it works.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and so they used it to their advantage. So talking about the echo chamber and everything as far as on TV, yes, they very much do that all the time. Now, the interesting thing is getting back into that, it's how do people buy into this? Because it's not based on facts or evidence. It's just repetition. Everyone thinks that they can't be brainwashed. And
there's a bunch of different videos about that.
yeah,
Let's see.
yeah. So there's a ton of them on there, but it's very interesting if you want to go
Let's try
back
this
there
one
and
here.
look it up.
Let's see what that one does. See if we can find anything here. Subliminal messages in the national anthem. Let's see. It's about 6 minutes. So
That's exactly what you were saying.
Yeah. It was standard. We heard it all the time. And they'll slow it down and show you later, but the words are actually scrolling.
Tell me when you see it at the bottom.
They'll go back. If you wanted to go probably further into the video, because the national anthem isn't that long, they will slow it down and they'll actually show it in slow motion. So
Right.
you see the wording.
that's what we need to see. See. All right. So this time slow down so that you can read it. Let's see. So there's the frames like going slower. I'll say, can you see? Right. Trust us, the government. Whoa, what?
Trust the U.S. government. It's actually what they're saying is it's scrolling right in the back. That's not actually. If you see,
Oh, I see. As the letters are starting to show,
I see.
there's other words that are also showing, but they don't come through. It's the words that you expect to
yes,
see.
but as you see this all the time, they're trying to engrave those messages. Believe in government, God.
Huh.
It's
Yeah, see, the rebellion is not tolerated. That's crazy.
yeah, they've been doing this forever.
Right, yeah.
Now, the CIA was behind this. Now, I'll kind of go back a little bit in history to kind of be and this will help a lot of people out to understand where we're at, why things have gotten a little bit crazy. Because it ends up to where there is a thing, first of all, our history has been rewritten from generation to generation. It's been slowly modified. If it was something that was done right away, people would have picked up on it immediately.
You mean
interested.
in the textbooks or
Yes, yes. In fact, the whole agenda of what has been building up, it all had to be done slowly.
Sure.
Now, the thing is because they're about to lose control of the New World Order, is they're having to speed up the whole game plan. And by speeding it all up, it's exposing it all to everybody because it isn't something slowly being brought into people. It just ends up to where it's like, the deep state is like, oh crap, we're about to lose our whole control over the whole narrative we've been working for decades
Why
on.
are they losing it? Why do you think they're losing it?
Well, I'll go back into like the little history and so that you'll kind of understand what this is all about. Once again, this goes back to the beginning of time, but this has to do with the manipulation of money, the Federal Reserve, the Rothschilds, the Rockefellers. What people don't know is that when we were taught in school that we won the Revolutionary War, we never won the Revolutionary War. We were told that we did, but we didn't. So we never broke away from the British bankers. So what ended up happening was that later on, the South wanted to break away from the British bankers. And so that was the reason for the Civil War.
Really?
They were actually
so it's
trying
not the
to...
slaves.
It wasn't the slaves.
I mean,
Now,
that's what most people think, right?
Exactly. History got rewritten. Now, the whole thing is did Abraham Lincoln want to do that as far as the Emancipation Act? Yes, but he did not want to sign that during the war because he did not want history to be written to say that it was about slavery, because that's not what it was about. But ultimately, he was pressured in a situation to where he did have to sign the Emancipation Act 2 weeks prior to the end of the war, and it ended up to where history got rewritten and they made it all about slavery. It was not about that at all. The South was trying to break away from the North because the North was still controlled from the British bankers. They wanted to have their own currency and not be controlled by them anymore. That was the whole purpose of the Civil War.
The greenback.
Well, I'm going to go into that. I'm surprised that you remember that, but it ended up to where what ended up happening was that Lincoln did not have the money to actually like put an army together and fight the South, and so he was in a catch-22 situation. He actually had to borrow the money from the British bankers, but the interest was so high he knew that we could never pay it back. So he borrowed the money anyways because his whole intentions was he wanted to keep the United States all together. He wanted to break away from the British bankers also, but he had to keep the South together
Right.
for future taxation and in order to keep the country together. So he borrows the money anyway. It ends up to where he does end up winning the war finally, and after he wins the war, well, at this point here, what he did was he brought out the greenback notes. Now, the greenback notes was backed up by nothing more than the good faith of the people of this country. There was no other backing of it.
Which is what's happening right now.
Well, no,
Sort of.
no,
Oh, no.
no, it's not. Something totally different. It ends up to where, so after he brought out the greenback notes, he pretty much told the British bankers, "Screw you. I'm not paying you back." And the British bankers were like, "Oh, hell no, we're not having this," which is why he was assassinated.
I see.
That's why he was taken out, because he was bringing out the greenback notes and not paying back the British bankers.
So he was going to basically screw them back over.
Yes, he was going to break away and just form our own
Nationalize
currency.
everything.
Yes, yes. And so, anyways, immediately after that, the bankers were always in control as far as who the politicians were. You know, they funded both sides. It didn't matter. As long as they had people in there, their puppets, to do their bidding, then it didn't matter. It became where the parties were an illusion to us, thinking that we had a choice, but we really didn't.
Well, how can you have a choice out of two?
Well, you really don't.
Right.
But it was like they're trying to say we had a choice out of two.
Sure, right.
But
you pick one out of two.
But it didn't matter because they funded both sides. No matter who got in there, it was just kind of like, well, we still won because we put the person in there. So anyways, what ended up happening was shortly after the Civil War in 1871, there was what was called the Organic Act of 1871. And this is extremely important that people do not know about. It ends up to where what they did was the bankers, because they funded the politicians, Congress, Senate, things of that nature, is they actually pushed a law through. And what they did was they actually shut down the Republic. So the Republic died in our country in 1871. Now, what they did, which people didn't know about, was after they shut down the Republic, they went and formed a corporation, United States Incorporated. We've been under a fraudulent, fictitious government ever since 1871.
Wow.
The republic that started this country and the country was born on was shut down at that particular point. Now, it ends up to where the United States Incorporated was actually a corporation registered in Puerto Rico. Keep this in mind when you think about the things going on in Puerto Rico. So is the Federal Reserve, which is not part of our country. It never has been. It's a privately owned corporation by the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Warburgs. I can't even think of who else was involved with it. But ultimately, it ended up to where that was another private corporation formed, registered in Puerto Rico, as well as the Federal Reserve.
Wow.
Now,
Why Puerto Rico? Is there a reason?
well, if you notice, you know, what is it, kind of a territory of the United States, but not a state.
Right.
And it just ends up to where it's an entity that's not part of the United
Oh,
States.
it's like a DC district.
Correct.
Kind of like the Vatican. It's
Right, Vatican, London.
Their own rules. They just kind of
Right.
No.
They're not. London's not part of England. Vatican's not part of Italy.
Wow.
Washington D.C. isn't part of the
So
United States.
is that how these people, the bankers and the people in control, get away with the government not being able to go after them, so to speak? I guess
They're in control.
Right, so they make some sort of... So how would they... Yeah, they wouldn't have their own people go against them. Right?
Yeah, right, exactly. So what ended up happening is that it ended up where the bankers always, funded the politicians, put them in there. Now, it ended up to where Kennedy comes along, John F. Kennedy, and at that particular time, they figured, he's a shoe, and, his family's mafia, he's a womanizer, we can easily control him. So anyways, they put him into office. Well, Kennedy found out what was going on, and he had a conscience, and he thought, wow, he was trying to do something right about this whole thing. And so there's three things he did he was warned not to do, but he did it anyway. And ultimately what that was is, are you familiar with John F. Kennedy's Secret Society speech?
No.
Really?
Well, yeah. Actually, of course, that's the one that supposedly after that he was killed because of that.
There was a few other things that were involved that brought it all down. Now,
Yeah.
what ended up happening at that particular time, you can find this all over the internet. It's called Kennedy Secret Society speech. It's like 20 minutes long. I encourage everybody to listen to that speech. It was so important. What he was doing was he was forewarning everybody that our enemies are not beyond our borders, but they exist within our borders, within secret societies, and he plans to expose this whole thing before he leaves office. So anyways, he was warned not to do that. He did that. Now, the other thing that he did that people are not aware of is he signed a bill to shut down the Federal Reserve.
Well, that's what I remember from my own research, that was pretty much the main reason why they actually had an attempt on him. And they
Well, it goes
did.
further. It goes further.
Oh.
Now it ends up to where he signed a bill to shut down the Federal Reserve. In fact, the bill was like 111110 EO, executive order. It's kind of interesting. It's all ones and the zero at the end. But anyways, the whole thing was, do you remember the silver certificates? You were probably not, you weren't born at that time, so you don't know.
I don't think I don't. Yeah. I
Anyways, there were silver certificates that were coming out into circulation at that time, and it ended up to where that was the new currency that was going to take place of the Federal Reserve note. It was a sovereign currency for the United States. It ends up to where the Federal Reserve, its own private banking system, that goes back into how it was illegally formed back in 1912, and there's a book that you can read on this. It's a very interesting. Anybody who wants to know the truth about the Federal Reserve, but it's called The Creature of Jekyll Island. I don't know. Are you familiar
Yeah,
with that?
for sure. Only 3 senators were actually there at the meeting. Is that what I remember?
Well, it ended up to where that was on an island, Jekyll Island, where it ended up where the Warburgs, Rockefellers, Rothschilds, J.P. Morgan, they all met together, and they had this plan to form the Federal Reserve. And so anyways, during the winter break in 2012, when Congress was on break, they actually didn't have enough people to actually ratify it, so it was formed illegally, where they voted it in and gave this new entity, the Federal Reserve, the ability to print money. And so ultimately, they were given the full power of everything that was going on. Now,
Why do you think nobody stopped that, or nobody in
nobody
Congress?
knew. All of this was done secretively. When it comes to we're talking about sports, concerts, things of that nature, they're called Roman circuses.
Right, like give the people bread.
Right,
Give the people
keep them distracted to where
Right.
they're not paying attention
But
to what
I'm
you're doing.
talking about like the other senators and the other people in government. I guess they were complicit.
I wasn't alive back then.
Well,
I
sure,
couldn't
sure.
tell you.
But I guess was there any? Did you find any information about that?
No,
Like,
because,
nobody else said anything about it.
I don't know. Like I said, it ended up to where back then they were being funded by the bankers. If they weren't funded, they're either blackmailed or, this is where it gets into Jeffrey Epstein, things of that nature
Right.
and everything. Now, a lot of these people were blackmailed. If they didn't take the bribes and everything getting involved, they would kind of get them involved with this pedophilia, satanic cult and everything. And it's kind of like, you have to do what we tell you to do now.
Right.
And it's, you're part of us now. We'll protect you, but if you turn on us, you're gone.
Well, see, let's touch back on Epstein, because I think a lot of people don't realize the magnitude of why they do this, and it's because they want to blackmail people.
Yeah.
To say, hey, we have pictures of you doing all these things. You thought it was just fun, but now we got you. So you got to do what we got to do, or your political career is over.
Yes. I mean, we can come back to that,
Yeah,
but
sure,
I want to
sure.
finish on
Yeah,
the
no,
Kennedy
please
thing.
Please do.
Because that was so important to what was going on. It ended up to where at that particular time, because Kennedy signed the bill to do it, the Federal Reserve gave his speech on secret society, and then he brought out the silver certificate note. Now, the silver was provided by Sukarno, who was the king of Indonesia. In fact, you'll see pictures of Kennedy with Sukarno at the particular time, and it was because Sukarno was also trying to help to bring down the Federal Reserve. Talking about this Brexit, things of that nature, or with the euro, you have to think of the euro as being also the Federal Reserve control of the currency over there in Europe. So that was also what was going down, was bringing down, Brexit was bringing down the euro. So every country could go back to their own sovereign currency. In other words, take away the power and shut down the Federal Reserve and the bankers' control. That's part of it, what's going on in Europe. Over here, yes, it is like shutting down the Federal Reserve. That is in the process. In fact, There's more that has happened now at this time that people don't even know about.
Yeah, it's awesome.
But let me
Yeah,
go
let's
on.
keep going. You know what? There's so
I
much.
don't want to lose the track line of
not-
thought here. But anyways, it ended up to where Kennedy ended up to where now he was taken out. Now, who took him out? There's, a lot of people be in question about this, but there's a lot of people where this is factual. Who was head of the CIA at the particular time, who was involved with taking him out, was actually Bush Senior.
Wow. Yeah.
Now, it ended up to where you have to know the whole history of the Bush family also. They were actually Fourth Reich, or say brought over from the Third
Well, they
Reich,
are
the
related
Fourth Reich.
in Germany, right?
Well, they actually
hail from
moved down to
Germany.
Argentina, and then from Argentina, they actually migrated into the U.S., and their names were changed and everything as far as like making them think that they were like American
Right.
citizens.
There were Bush and Dolph before. No, just kidding.
Well, no, I can't remember. It was something like when George uses Walker as the middle name. I think that was like the last name. I'm not sure on that one. So, but anyways, there was a different name. They did come in here and it became the Bushes. So anyways, Bush Sr. was very much involved with the takeout of John
Wow.
F. Kennedy.
I don't think people know that. I never
There's
heard
a
of
lot
that.
of people who do, but like I said, there's a lot of people who don't. Now,
Yeah.
what ended up happening was after Kennedy was taken out, the bankers took control again. They immediately put in Johnson, and everybody after that was another puppet for the bankers. And immediately they took the silver certificates out of circulation because it was like, oh no, we're not going to have any of this. Now, the thing was, is people didn't know this bill that John F. Kennedy signed to do with the Federal Reserve, it was never rescinded. So initially it still stands. People just
wow.
don't know about
Right.
it.
It was never put away. Rescinding means to take it away.
Right, to
drive
do
it
away
back.
with it. But anyways, it's still active.
Wow.
But so what ended up happening was the bankers stayed in control for all these years, and then it ended up to where Reagan comes along. Well, Reagan tried to do the same thing. However, it ended up to where at that particular time, if you remember, who was the vice president at the time was actually Bush Sr.
Right.
So, anyways, while he was trying to do the same thing that Kennedy was trying to do, they pretty much came back to him and says, look, you do as we tell you to do, or we're going to take you out. Well, that was the reason for the assassination attempt on him.
Yeah.
Now, who attempted did the assassination attempt on him? It was Charles Hinckley. Who was Charles Hinckley? He was the son of a business associate for Bush.
Wow.
And so the whole thing is that if they took out Reagan, Bush would have become the president at that particular time. So this has all been control over the bankers throughout this entire time. Then it ended up to where, Trump is now trying to do the same thing. He's shutting down the Federal Reserve. In fact, he's already successful done it. People just don't know
Right.
the whole thing about it.
So they transferred it to the Treasury.
Correct,
That's kind of the
correct.
short, quick little.
And who's actually CEO, one of the CEOs of the Treasury is actually Trump, meaning that anybody who wants money from the Federal Reserve around the world has to get Trump's approval.
Wow. So
It's priceless.
I know, that is so huge, and it was not in the news. It was definitely not on Facebook because they're
Because the
keeping
deep
that
state
stuff away.
controls the news, the
Of
narrative.
course. So let's talk about that just real quick now, and then we can get back to this history because
Okay.
I think that obviously it's so important, hugely important. I mean, the only other president that did that before was Andrew Jackson.
I couldn't tell you the history going back that far because
As far as I remember from my own research, Andrew Jackson ended the Fed, but then Woodrow Wilson came in and reinstated it.
Well, the other things that's kind of going on, and I'll tie this all into this also, is there's a thing that a lot of people aren't familiar with. They can research this. It's called Nasara and Gassara. We're in the process of that happening. This is just absolutely awesome for the entire world. NASARA stands for National Economical Stabilization and Reformation Act. Gassara, it started out as NASARA, which was supposed to be here in the U.S. It was actually supposed to be announced on the day of 9/11, 9/11 September. There's a new banking system that was going to come online at that particular day. All the computers were on the second floor of one of the World Trade Centers. In the bottom basement, 3 floors underneath the ground, it ended up to where there was a stash of gold that was actually being loaned from China to the U.S., being leased, and it was actually due to go back to China that particular day. There's a lot of things that happened on that particular day, but the reason why the towers were being brought down was it was brought down 1 hour prior to the new banking system coming online and NASARA being announced. and they stopped the whole thing from happening and continued the warring, and people never found out what was the great things that were getting ready to happen. We're at the verge of now finally getting to the point where Nassar and everything. Gassara is the very same thing. It's Global Economical Stabilization and Reformation Act. That's about to be announced throughout the entire world, but it has to happen in the U.S. first. That's why Trump keeps saying that the best is yet to come, and just before Christmas, he has to get these Democrats, and I don't like to use that term because the truth of the matter is, yes, a majority of the Democrats are the deep state, but the deep state also involves people on the Republican side. And they did that so that they could control the voting on issues.
Sure.
And so, when people say it's just the Democrats and the Republicans, it's kind of like not the technical term. You should use deep state, that they're on both sides. However, the majority of them, and more obvious ones, you get people like Romney, McCain, things of that nature. They were obviously deep state Republicans, and so it's kind of like you can kind of pick it out who they were. And it's kind of ironic when you think about some of these people, they're gone. There's a reason why they're gone.
Where's Mitt Romney now? Why is he not around? I mean, he was the Ken of the Barbie.
Pretty soon, none of them are going to be around.
Yeah.
Oh, Gitmo's been expanded. There's a lot of awesome things going on in the background that people have no idea. In fact, I can't tell you, but I will say, mark your calendars for October 30th.
October 30th.
October 30th. It's something very big is going to happen early in the morning, and it's just going to shock everybody.
Give us a clue, man. You cannot leave us like this.
I'll tell you later.
Oh, come on. We'll put it on the comments once we actually publish this.
Okay.
Wow.
Something that people have been waiting for a long time.
Does that have anything to do with Halloween?
The day before. Day before.
That's great, man. So, Trump.
Yes.
People say, hey, well, there's so much going on behind the scenes. There's the deep state, there's the globalists, there's the New World Order. How is Trump still operating? I mean, my assumption is that Trump is an outsider, and that he knows them.
Yes.
He's rubbed elbows with them. People are always saying, oh, well, Trump with Epstein here in this picture. Well, yeah, he was in New York, and they were all hanging out together because that was the case. But that doesn't mean he was probably doing that.
No, it's just like Jesus would go into the bars, Well, yeah. And the reason why he did that was because,
they were all socialites, so they were bound to take a picture together at some point. But that doesn't mean they were at the island or...
No, exactly. What it meant was that he knew how these people think. And when you know how somebody thinks, you're able to work them in a chess game.
Yeah.
It's to his advantage, And so it ends up to where when people bring up these things, they're like conspiracy theories, because a lot of that is just fake news. They create these stories, and it's like, yeah, he was a wealthy individual. He was around these people, but he didn't drink. He didn't do any of these other things. He was somebody who was completely straight the entire time. Now, if you really want to go back further into the connection, tying into the history, when I was talking about, John F. Kennedy to Reagan, back to Trump and everything, a lot of people around the world now, they know about Q. And of course, it ends up to where people go, oh, conspiracy theory. It's kind of like, it's the most ingenious plan that there ever was. When you sit there and you know what is actually going on and you follow the entire thing, you're going, oh my God, this thing's ingenious. Because you look at the timelines, the people who don't pay attention to it, they don't watch it, they don't have a clue to what is going on. They're going, oh, you said it was going to happen on this day, it didn't happen, blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, there's a lot of things. And part of those false timelines was to trigger the deep state to do something so that it was like a trap for him. And so...
It was a bait.
Right, that's exactly what it was. And when you see the whole thing come together, how things were talked about 3 years prior on a timeline delta, and then all 3 years later on that very exact day, at the very same time, exact time, this event took place, and it's kind of like, oh my God, when it told us this, it was actually 3 years later, a delta right at this particular time. It's like, how did they know that far in advance, right on this particular day, at this particular time, this was going to happen? It was like, this plan is so mapped out, it is mind-blowing.
What's going on with Q? A lot of people, of course, are just mystified with Q. The people that believe it, they believe it. The people that don't, they're just like, what is going on? I mean, recently...
Well, the people who don't believe Q don't believe anything else.
Well, sure, exactly. And I guess I would like to invite all those people that don't really quite believe in all these conspiracy theories, that they should do their own research.
Yes.
Find
yes,
their own answers.
Absolutely.
Because you found answers.
Think for yourself.
Think for yourself, but do your own research to think for yourself. But you put the dots together because you did some research that led you to understand and catch all these patterns that converge into an obvious conclusion. So I think people that just kind of make fun of conspiracy theorists don't really take the time to do that. They read a couple of headlines.
That's exactly what they do.
Or they read the opposition, the propaganda that's saying the opposite, making fun of the people that are doing that. So what would you say to those people that don't quite believe in conspiracy theories and they think we're just putting them on a tinfoil hat?
Well, there's a lot of people who are waking up now. It's kind of like a lot of people are thinking, why didn't Trump go in there and take care of everything that's going on in Seattle and Oregon? Because legally he could not go in there. It ended up to where he had to be invited in. Trump he knows the deep state's plan. It ends up to where the CIA is not part of our government. That's another part of the shadow government that was formed in 1871. And their whole job was to go into other countries, create destabilization. By creating the destabilization, they were able to go in there, topple the governments, and after they toppled the governments with the money and everything, they were able to put in their own puppets into the government. Theonce they controlled the government in that country, they were also in control of the country's currency and were able to seal the country's assets. Plus, the bankers were able to put in their central banks.
Right.
So if you look at all
and
these
the corporations,
if you looked at all these countries, that wars, have been instigated or tried to be started, the one thing they all have in common is Rothschild did not have his central banks in those countries. That's what it was all about. So, if the media came out there and told everybody, hey, we want to go into this country and we want to take it down so that we can actually put in our central banks and control the currency, are you with us?
Right, exactly.
Nobody's going to
go for that. Nobody's going to go for that.
They have to have everybody in agreement, saying, yes, we're going to go do this. So they create a false narrative. And by creating that false narrative, people are just like, the same thing as far as bringing down the towers. When they brought down the towers, it ended up to where I can't tell you how many people I've met who have been in the military. And when that happened, I said, well, what made you decide to get into the military? I said, when the towers came down, I didn't even have to think about it.
Yeah.
Catch that? I didn't even have to think about it.
Exactly.
They didn't think about it. They just reacted.
It became a symbol for them to just do it. Tim Kennedy on the Joe Rogan podcast just said that himself. He said, when the towers came down, that's when I joined the military.
Yes, because it triggered people's emotions. They reacted on their emotions. Once again, critical thinking went right out the door. It was just reacting on emotions. But, when it gets into people who, aren't awake or they want to list everything as a conspiracy theory, that was something I had a big question about for a long time, because you could walk up to somebody, you're holding a conversation, and I'll tell you the difference between what I say is an intelligent person and a person who isn't intelligent. An intelligent people we can hold a conversation with one another. We may have disagreements with one another, but we're holding an intelligent conversation. We're not sitting there screaming. We're not name-calling. When somebody starts name-calling, they've lost the debate already. That's the first sign when that actually happens. Now, intelligent people, what they're doing is that we may have different information, but we receive new information. We may go take that information, research and everything, and then it ends up to where if that new information changes what we thought in the first place, we're willing to change our thought process in order to accommodate the new facts and evidence given to us.
Right.
Now, somebody who's unintelligent, what I like to say, is it ends up to where they're allowing their ego to still stay in control over them. And I questioned this. I said, well, how does this even happen? Because you could walk up to somebody, you're kind of like talking about something. Of course, they're not about finding the truth. They're all about being right. That's the ego.
I see.
Now, it ends up to where you go up to them, you're talking about something, going, first of all, I want to point out, too, when somebody says that, well, in my opinion.
Uh-oh.
I'll tell you right now, first of all, no intelligent conversation ever started out with in my opinion, because opinions are based on somebody's limited ability of what they perceive to be true,
right?
Not facts and evidence.
Yeah, which is what I was saying earlier, that people say, I don't believe somebody could do that. Well, that's your opinion. That's what you...
Opinions don't matter.
you yourself would not do that, so you cannot imagine somebody else doing that. That's a problem of thinking right there.
Well, when it gets back into that, as far as the ego, things of that nature. I couldn't understand this. You know, it was like going, you could walk up to somebody, give them facts and evidence. You cannot debate it right in front of them. And as you hand it to them, they push it away. They turn their head and they go, I don't believe that, in my opinion. And I thought, why would somebody ever do something that crazy? That makes no sense to me whatsoever. And ultimately, you know, through the research, trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together, it came down to it's the human ego. We all have an ego. In order for anyone to find the truth, we have to get rid of our ego. When you get rid of your ego, all of a sudden, everything starts coming to you. That's when you open up in conversation. You're ready to take in new information. You're ready to go out there, do the research, find out the truth for yourself. In other words, start thinking for yourself. Stop having the news that's fake, giving you this false information, a fake narrative, and because of an echo chamber where they keep repeating it every single day, come back and go, well, I know it's true. I saw it on this channel, this channel, this channel, and that channel. And it's like, what were the facts and the evidence? It doesn't matter. I saw it on this channel, this channel, this channel. And it's kind of like, you're basing it on nothing,
Right.
by somebody's emotions, repetition. And the thing that I tell people, you know, it's kind of like, it goes back into brainwashing, and everyone thinks, well, I can't be brainwashed. I'm too smart to be brainwashed. It's like everyone was brainwashed. But ultimately, it's kind of like, here's a question I kind of pose to some people who think that they can't be brainwashed. You know, everyone has probably done this one time in their life where it ends up to where something may have happened. You've changed the narrative personally, and as you change the narrative, you told this narrative over so many times that you look back at that particular situation or instance and you're going, what really happened? You don't even remember. You actually believe the narrative you created in your mind.
You forget the real story for the story you made up in your mind.
Correct.
Yeah. And well, that is true of many people too. They like they say, you know, those pathological liars that they just start telling themselves a story and they start believing it. That's what they think is real, and that's what they come on to you on an argument, thinking this is what happened. You're like, no, that is clearly not what happened, but you can't get him out of there. So
I can think of one time I did it in my life where I actually sunk a sailboat in Minnesota, and I was trying to get out of trouble.
Yeah. So Danny's bringing up here the Mandela effect. Is that similar? It refers to a situation in which a large mass of people believes that an event occurred when it did not.
Well, that's
not quite the same, is it?
No, that gets into where the Mandela effect is, that there's different timelines, and it ends up to where things get altered. And you could be saying where somebody goes back and they pull something up in the Bible, this particular version of it, and it ended up to where at this particular time it had a certain word in it. But then you go back a few years later and you look at that very same thing, and now that word's been changed to something else, and you're going, wait a minute, I remember it was... But if you had both copies of that and you were able to compare, you go, it was actually changed. So the Mandela effect actually refers to like things that are like altered in timelines. And it ends up to where because of that changing the perception, people start to believe that, well, that's not what I remember.
It could have been this, it could have been that. So confusion, basically, right?
Yes, it's confusion.
Is that the same thing as you were saying earlier of where they basically... Oh, I almost lost my thread of thought. Yeah, when they do the narrative, and you got to follow that, so they change the history.
Yes.
Right.
And like I said, they had to do it slowly because it ended up to where, you know, when your kids are going to school, you're too busy going to work, and it's just like all you're doing is like, do your homework. You don't see what they're reading. You don't see what their lessons are. You didn't know that the textbook was changed and altered. And so ultimately, the government was doing that. They were actually altering and changing the text slowly every generation. And so what the kids have coming out now learning in school is totally different than what we were learning. In fact, when you think about it, when I was younger, going to school, it ended up to where you had government classes in high school.
Yeah, I used to have U.S. government. That's where.
Well, that doesn't exist anymore. It's called social studies, social medicine, social media. They tried to engrave into everybody's mind this slow thing as far as socialism by using this word social and changing it in social security. All these ways that were done where people didn't even think about it, it's slowly being implanted into your mind that it's something totally acceptable. So that when they did make the transition, it's like, hey, we've got it already. We've had Social Security, we've got social media, it's all socialism.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people are saying that. It's like, obviously with the pandemic, then they're starting to push that socialism and
Plandemic.
like pandemic. That's what a lot of people say that. So what are your thoughts on the pandemic, the virus?
Plandemic.
Is it? I said, first of all, was the virus man-made?
Yes. In fact, the information's coming out about it right now. There's a Chinese whistleblower. She's coming out there on the news. In fact, there was something that I saw today was quite humorous. Even Fox News kind of got busted on it. Well, that was a different thing. It was, it was like, I don't know if you could pull up this video. It's just priceless. It was something about Fox, Fox reaction to Soros being brought up by Newt Gingrich. Something about Newt Gingrich, Fox, and George Soros.
Interesting.
I mean, you have to see the reaction. I mean, it was just like they were like, "We don't talk about George Soros."
Wow. Let's see.
And right there.
Oh, we found it. Found it.
If they actually show this, I mean, it's priceless to watch their reaction.
That's awesome. Here we go. Let's see. When Newt Gingrich mentions George Soros, Fox News host go silent, refuse to discuss. And we'll talk about him in a little bit. See.
Okay. Watch this.
Well, hang on, dude. Play from the beginning, dude.
This is the beginning.
Oh, this is it. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's start over.
Everybody, right? Speaker Gingrich, I know you have a final thought for us.
Yeah, look, the number one problem in almost all these cities is George Soros elected left-wing, anti-police, pro-criminal district attorneys who refuse to keep people locked up. Just yesterday, they put somebody back on the street who's wanted for 2 different murders in New York City. You cannot solve this problem, and both Harris and Biden have talked
Watch the
very
reaction.
proudly about what they call progressive district attorneys. Progressive district attorneys are anti-police, pro-criminal, and overwhelmingly elected with George Soros' money, and they're a major cause of the violence we're seeing because they keep putting the violent criminals back on the street.
I'm not sure we need to bring George Soros into this.
Straight up like that.
I was going to say you get the last word, Speaker.
He paid for it. I mean, why can't we discuss the fact that millions of dollars he spent?
I agree with
But
Melissa. George Soros doesn't need to be a part of this conversation.
Okay,
Watch.
so it's verboten.
All right, we're gonna.
They're dumbfounded.
Wow. Look at them. They're still like,
Okay, we're gonna move on.
oh, we're going to move on. Holy shit. Wow, dude. Okay, so real quick, for all those newbies out there that don't understand who George Soros is, you and I do, but give us, wow.
Satan reincarnated.
That's what people have said many times. But what's going on with George Soros? What does he do? And why is he meddling with all this? And what does he own that make all this happen?
Well, I couldn't give you the full history, but ultimately George Soros was probably one of the most wicked men on this planet. You go back to the times of when the Nazis were like taking all the Jewish people in Germany, locking them up in the concentration camp. George Soros stated that was the best time of his life. He basically was going in there and taking up all the gold and the silver and everything that these people, Jewish people, had inside their homes. And he was just a teenager. And so ultimately, by taking all the wealth of these Jewish people who were being locked up, he was able to build up an empire where he's a multi-billionaire in the world, and he just controls and manipulates governments all over the world. So somebody who's very much up there, top of the deep state. But, the money, everybody goes, well, after he's spending all this money, for all these riots, things like in Ferguson, things of that nature, all these people, who are coming in, they're rioting. In fact, they're being paid by George Soros.
Right. Yeah, a lot of people have seen the Craigslist ad.
Yes, and that's another thing. And then there was something interesting that I saw not too long ago also was, I don't remember where it was, if it was on a video or what, but it ended up to where there were some flight attendants that were talking about, when the COVID thing hit, it ended up to where all the conventions, people traveling for work and everything, it all pretty much stopped. So the airlines wasn't having a lot of people on the flights. Well, it ended up to where all of a sudden the flight attendants noticed something very strange, that there was all these very young urban kids who were on the flight, and it ended up to where it was very obvious. They thought it was very weird that why do we have all these young kids who are on here now? And it was apparent by all the questions that they were asking the flight attendants that they had never flown before. And they thought it was very bizarre that here we've got all these young people, they've never flown before because of all the questions that they're asking. It's like, where do they come up with the money? What are they doing? And ultimately, they kind of put the pieces together as this is the people who are being paid by George Soros who are leaving one city, going to another, which is why you hear in the narrative is like, these people aren't even from here. No, they're not. Yeah. They're being bussed and flown in.
A lot of sheriffs have arrested all these people in about
peaceful
80
protests.
Right, yeah. Wow. I mean, like 80 to 90% of these people are from out of state.
Yes. And they're getting paid, and so, the whole thing is that when George Soros, stops paying them, in fact, there's another video somewhere where somebody saw this and they were going, well, anybody could have done that. But there was protesters from Ferguson. They didn't get paid. I don't know. You might pull this up on YouTube also, but it was Ferguson protesters protesting George Soros for not getting paid.
I did see that. I saw that. We're going to pull that out.
And then going, George Soros, pay us. And it's kind of like ultimately George Soros bugged out on them, after they had done all this stuff. And they were just kind of like voicing their concern. But, it's just another way. And other people say, oh, that was staged. It's kind of like, really?
Oh, wow.
At what point do you wake up?
Exactly.
So, no, there's a lot of crazy things that are happening like that. And once again, the news, it's all controlled by 6 corporations, all the stations, and those 6 corporations, it's all part of the deep state. So their whole thing is that once the new banking system takes place and the Federal Reserve is shut down, they're no longer in control of anything anymore. They can't control us. They can't control the world. They were hoping to bring in this new world order, and some people are going, well, they're not taking change in anymore. It's kind of like people are saying, well, you got to give me the exact amount because I don't have change to give you. And they're thinking that, something's about to happen. This new world order currency is going to come in. Quite the opposite. It ended up to where if Hillary had gotten in there, yes, that was the game plan. They were going to finalize the New World Order once she got in there. And this is why they're so mad, because Trump is dismantling the whole New World Order. In fact, when it goes back to the NESARA GESARA, which I never really went into the detail about that, but what that is it's it's just so many awesome things. Imagine all the debt that you have, whether it's a student loan, car loan, a mortgage on a house, credit card loan, anything attached to the banks being wiped out free and clear. On top of that, everybody in the world will start receiving a minimum income every single month to help cover the cost of living. So what this does is it frees people up to where no longer are you a slave to just making money to survive. But now that most of your necessities and everything are being covered, it ends up to where you're also able to now pursue your passion. It frees people up. There's a lot of great things that are going to come out of this. In fact, it's already happening to people. It's kind of in a beta testing right now. People are like finding out that their student loan is wiped out free and clear. Their mortgage has been wiped out free and clear.
Wow, we're going to talk about this some more.
Everything's been wiped out.
I know a lot of people want to hear about that.
Well, this is part of why Trump keeps saying that the best is yet to come.
Oh, wow.
Because this is about what's going to happen. But he has to get back into office.
The banking industry will never let that happen.
The banking industry doesn't have any control over it.
They're going to let mortgages go away just like that.
Yeah, I can explain that.
Okay.
We'll get to that point. But why don't we take a little break?
It sounds great.
Go, to the party, and then just come back. We've been going for about an hour and a half.
Have we really?
I told you it was going to go long. See, we're going to hit the 2-hour mark once again to make sure we get all of our listeners out there everything that they need to hear so that they can do their own research or talk shit or whatever you're going to do. But we're going to talk about this and the True Talk. So we'll be right back. All right, guys, we're back for our second half of the whole shabam here with Mike Johnson. Mike, where do we leave off?
Using the restroom.
That's right. How did that go?
Everything came out just fine.
How did you like my bidet?
Yeah, I was looking for the toilet paper.
I I didn't get to HEB on time, man. I'm sorry. I didn't get to the grocery store on time. I was
I'll
ousted.
confirm that with you the next time I come over.
I was ousted, man, by the mask police. Yeah, man. They had an iPad at the front, and they told me they couldn't come. I couldn't come in.
Oh, okay.
So I just installed bidets in my house.
It all worked out.
It all worked out because I just washed my butt. Much better, anyways, than wiping it. No, but in all seriousness, we left off in the banking system and how that's affecting pretty much all of our lives,
Yes.
inside and out. So take it away.
We were talking about Nassar and Gassara, and I was talking about the debt forgiveness, and I guess the question came up as far as like, well, how is that going to happen? That's not going to happen. It's like, well,
Sounds too good to be true.
it does sound too good to be true, but yet it ends up to where if you understand how the whole debt system came about in the first place, that it was all based on fraud, then it ends up to where you understand how the debt forgiveness can actually take place. And this isn't just in the U.S., this is all over the world.
Yeah.
It is already happening. Like I said, it ends up to where people have already like shown proof and evidence that their mortgage has been wiped out free and clear. Their student loans have been wiped out. Their car loans have been wiped out. It's zeroed out. But it is in a beta stage that is going on right now. And it ends up to where that's why Trump keeps saying once again that the best is yet to come, because if he gets back in there and has a Republican Congress, then he will be able to finalize this legally to where the debt and everything is forgiven. Now, how is this possible? The very simple answer about that is talking about it being based on fraud is that prior to the Federal Reserve, there are two other banking systems that were in our country. The second time that the bankers, which was also part of the British bankers system, our country has never controlled our own currency. The only thing that our country has ever controlled through the Treasury has actually been the coinage, not the bills itself. The bills have always been controlled by the bankers.
So the big money.
Well, the paper money. The bigger money, the coinage, the solid things, made out of different materials as far as, copper, silver, nickel, things of that nature. That is real currency. The paper money is just monopoly money.
And it says it right on it. It's a note. It's a federal note.
Yes, it is. And it ends up to where, once again, the Federal Reserve is not part of the United States government. It never has been. It's its own corporation that's registered in Puerto Rico, just as the IRS. But anyways, how this will come about as far as the debt forgiveness is it ends up to where, I was just talking about this earlier, a lot of the videos and everything that used to be up on YouTube, how the birth certificate is used as shall-tell property. Well, what happened was after the second banking system collapsed, the Supreme Court made a ruling that because of what the bankers had done, they could no longer ever lend out debits, credits, or their own money ever again. This still stands to this very day that the bankers cannot lend out debits, credits, or their own money.
What does that mean? People that don't understand accounting speak.
Well,
Debits, credits.
it's kind of like when people make deposits into the bank, they can't take that money and loan it out to somebody else. That would be,
Isn't that what the banks would do, though?
that's what we think they do.
Right.
Okay, but that's not really what's happening. So because they can't loan out debits, credits, or their own money, if they had their own bankroll where they could sit there and loan it to us and then charge us interest and everything on it, that's all illegal. They can't do that. So the question is where does the money come from? How do they loan us money when it comes to like a car loan, a student loan, a mortgage, anything of that nature, credit card debt? Well, this goes back to fraud. Is that what ended up happening is during the Supreme Court ruling after the collapse of the second banking system, the Supreme Court ruled you cannot lend out debits, credits, your own money. So after they formed the Federal Reserve illegally, they came back several years later, back in 1931. They said, hey, we figured out a way to pay back the restitution, which was ordered during the same lawsuit, back to everybody, and the government is we're going to create a bond in everybody's name. Well, that bond is your birth certificate. So by Black's Law, if you notice on your birth certificate, your name is all in capital letters. Well, by Black's Law, everything in capital letters becomes a corporation. So a fictitious corporation was created at your birth. Your birth certificate then was traded on the stock market. It's been traded on the stock market since your birth. It is estimated that everyone's birth certificate now around the entire world is literally close to $1 billion.
Can anybody just go in there and buy and trade that kind of bond, or how does?
No,
Is it the shadow market?
I will tell you something interesting about it. Where I found proof about this is ultimately it ended up to where. What the banks did is they created this bond. So when you go in there and you're borrowing money, whether it's for a mortgage, a student loan, credit card, anything of that nature, because they can't loan out debits, credits, or your own money, they're actually loaning you your own money created from your own bond, which is your birth certificate, and they're charging you interest for it. It's nothing more than debt slavery. That's why the debt forgiveness will happen, because you never owned the money in the first place. It was your money.
So how is it your money because it was traded? So somebody paid money for your certificate, and that's the money you're talking about?
Your birth certificate, the original copy, is actually the bond that's been traded on the stock market. It is your labor and everything that you have done that has actually like grown this.
So it's all your productive output.
Yes. But it is estimated, like I said, that everyone is close to $1 billion. So people are like, well, how could this possibly happen? Plus, you have to understand too, there's a new banking system coming online. When it came to like transferring money all over the world, the system that's used to do that is called SWIFT, which is SWIFT, and that's just like, so when you're talking about you make a closing on something, you're transferring money from this location over to this location, it goes through the SWIFT system, which goes through the Federal Reserve. Well, there's a new banking system that's coming in place to take place of the Federal Reserve. And this also ties into Brexit, which is the euro over there. The euro, you might think of it as the European form of Federal Reserve. It is still the money control system throughout the British bankers. So Brexit was part of collapsing the banking system over there so that each country could go back to their own currency, which is backed up by gold, asset-backed, no longer monopoly money. Then all the currencies will actually be reevaluated, or revaluated, I should say, to be on par with everybody. So it's equal trading and based upon the assets each country has. There's some countries, take for example Zimbabwe over in Africa. It ends up to where Zimbabwe is one of the wealthiest countries in the world as far as the gold, the diamonds, other resources that it has.
Right.
It can actually support the entire economy of Africa, yet it's just a small little country, and yet their currency over there right now is worthless. Absolutely worthless. In fact, they use other currencies from around the world because they've been controlled by the banking system. But when this all happens, the revaluation and everything, literally the assets that's in Zimbabwe alone, which should be one of the wealthiest countries in the world, yet it is made to be impoverished through the bankers that are in control right now, but it will become one of the wealthiest countries in the world.
Wow. So is that because GDP is not, is that related to GDP? In any way?
Well, in a sense, it ends up to where...
It should be, but it's not. Like, it's rigged?
It's rigged. The whole monetary system is rigged.
Yeah.
And it's been not in their favor. So that the British bankers could actually steal the country's assets, use it to their benefit, and then ultimately the entire country and the people in the country suffer for it. But... that was the main thing that I wanted to tell you about the banking system and why, you can go up, like I said, there used to be a lot of videos on this on YouTube that was like your birth certificate used as chattel property. Mm-hmm. There's other terms that were used for it also, where the birth certificate and how it's used as a bond. But like I said, through Black's Law, anything. I mean, when you get into that birth certificate also, there's a lot of fraudulent stuff when you go into... because your name is in capital letters. If you look at your name on your driver's license, you look at it on your bills, you look at your checks. If you don't have customized checks or anything, it's all in capital letters. And the reason is because it's not really you. It's actually the fictitious corporation created where they want you to think that you're one and the same, but you're not the same.
So the reason they did that was why?
Because by doing that, it ended up to where the bankers controlled this whole it put us into debt slavery. Mm-hmm. We think we owe money. They control us, and by controlling us, they decide whether we live in poverty or whether we're actually... But if we gain, typically, and I hate to say this, but if you think about it, most of the people who make a lot of money in different careers... a lot of them are actually involved with businesses, whether they know it or not, as far as benefiting the deep state or the cabal around the world, as far as keeping the illusion going, whether it's like the legal system, whether it's attorneys or something, to where they think that they're actually, enforcing the law. But they're actually working...
Enforcing the wrong law,
exactly.
So to speak, basically.
It's something that's that double standard or double justice tier system as far as justice. They've got a different set of laws for them, a different set of laws for us.
So you said a birth certificate is a bond.
Yes.
And where does the Social Security number fall into that? Isn't that something similar?
No, but I was going to say, as far as like proof, as far as the account, it ended up to where the account that your name... attached to the bond and everything. It's known as a Treasury Direct account. And the information came out at one time as far as the number that you could actually use that connected to your account. And I was actually in, it was PayPal at one time. And, you can set up different bank accounts. Well, it ended up to where at that time, I knew the number and everything to put in for the account from my personal account because I knew what to attach to it, which was part of your Social Security, but there were other numbers attached to it. And so I was acting like I was opening up another bank account to draw the money off of in there, and I actually put the numbers in there, and I'll be damned. There's a Treasury Direct account in my name. Now, the problem was, and this became a problem I had to resolve with PayPal, was it ended up to where they were going, oh, crap, whatever. It was the fact that it ended up to where when you have an account transferring money, whatever, through PayPal, is what they typically do is they deposit small amounts like 1 cent, 3 cents, whatever, into your account. And then you have to come back and tell them what was the amount that was deposited into the account. Well, I couldn't tell them what was being deposited into my Treasury Direct account.
Well, yeah, exactly, because you're not supposed to have access to it, right?
Right, so they froze all my accounts.
So then who has access to these accounts, and how can somebody find their own account? I mean, what's going on with that?
The bailiffs in the court have access to it. There are other people who have access to it.
What do they do with them?
Well, it's like when you go in there and you have to pay a ticket for a fine or something of that nature. They're actually double dipping. They trick you into like thinking that, first of all, they'll ask you your name, the same thing that's on your driver's license. Keep in mind that name that they're asking you is actually the fictitious corporation created at your birth. You could walk in there and say, hey, I'm Albert, no, I'm not this person that you're calling out on that card.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, that may be your birth given name, but you could just say, I'm Albert. I am not that straw man account that was created.
So it has to do with being a natural person.
Yes, a sovereign individual. You're a sovereign individual, but it is
by design and by birth.
Well, there's another system that we're trapped into that also.
Oh shit! Of course.
Because when you look at the word birth, there's another meaning behind it, and it's kind of like BERTH. And what that means, it's like a ship coming into a dock. It's being birthed at the dock. And this is all ties into your fictitious corporation. Anyways, it gets very complicated. I don't even have time to go into that at this point.
But if you guys want to check it out at home, you got to look into maritime law, and your mind will be blown by that alone.
Well, look up maritime law, but it's admiral law.
Admiral law.
And then the way that you could really look this up is do research, and I recommend using DuckDuckGo. Don't use Google. Google ends up to where they censor everything.
They got fact checkers out there too.
Yeah. They also know what you're thinking. They also know other things that you've looked up and everything. So if you're somebody who's looking to wake up, you're looking for new information, they know what side or what you've been thinking for a long time, and they're going to feed you that narrative.
So they keep you in that
They keep you in that zone. So if you're trying to break free or you're trying to find new information, it's going to be very difficult because they're keeping you trapped in that. So if you really want to find good information, go out of Google, because it's just kind of like you can be sitting there talking to somebody about a particular product. Oh, I really like those boots. I want to go buy those pair of boots, whatever. And as you're talking about that, you've got your phone turned off and everything, but you go to turn your phone back on, and all of a sudden, while you're looking at every page, it's like, it's boots.
Yep.
So they're listening to you. They know.
Exactly.
They know what you're thinking. They know what your mindset is, and so they feed that narrative.
It's not just what you're searching on, but I've noticed that also, like you said, what you're talking about, even as you go into the search, it will bring that up.
Yes.
Right then on the spot.
Yes.
So I think everybody kind of knows that, and that should be proof enough that, hey, there's a lot more going on behind the scenes that people
my main point is that it ends up to where if you're trying to get new information, trying to find something that doesn't feed your narrative, but you're trying to look for the truth. You're more apt to find the truth if you go out of Google, because Google's just going to feed the narrative they know that you're thinking. So go to DuckDuckGo. It's like I'm somebody who's very much into holistic medicine, so it ended up to where I used to tell people about all these different sites where they could go find this information, cures for different diseases.
There you go. This is what it looks like. DuckDuckGo.com.
And like a prime example, if you just put in there, and I just want to use this as an example. This is something for a long time I couldn't tell people about, but it was what was it? H2O2 therapy.
Say that again.
H2O2 benefits of H2O2 therapy. Put benefits in the beginning.
It's right there, on the search. Okay.
Benefits of H2O2 therapy.
There we go. Right there, first result. There you are.
Right here. This one.
Second
Right
second
here.
one.
Okay. This is something to where for the longest time I was trying to pass this on to different people, and I've done it myself. I've known a lot of other people who have gotten over cancer, have gotten over other diseases, who are actually given terminal
Diagnosis.
yes, saying that you don't have a month to live, and it's kind of like out of active desperation. Instead of doing chemo or anything, I told them about this website, but I don't, there's certain things that I kind of like don't really point it out. My main thing that I was trying to point out here is if you did this on Google and you tried to look up what I just told you to look up,
It won't
you're not
come
going
up.
to find it.
Well,
You'll
let's
go
do that.
page after page after page after page.
Let's try
and
Google
it used
then.
to be available, but Google has hit it because it is great information on cures for almost every disease.
That's awesome. This website's actually pretty cool. It's just educate yourself. It's got stuff about
Well,
colloidal
if you-
silver, chemtrails. I mean, all these different subjects here that you probably will not find on Google.
And I didn't even notice. I wasn't even paying attention
Yeah,
to that.
pretty
It was
cool.
mainly the health thing going down into this down here, but it actually gives a procedure as far as like how you can actually go through hydrogen peroxide therapy to cleanse your body. And but anyways, it's something that's used all over the world. They do it intravenously. They do other things, but here in the U.S., it's outlawed.
Huh.
And it's
So look up on Google the same thing. H2O2 therapy.
benefits of H2O2.
Benefits, yeah. And see what we come up with on Google.
And the page is going to start out with educate yourself. And so if you're looking for that, in Google, you're going to go, I don't see anything that says educate yourself. And it's like you'll go for pages and pages, trying to find it in the search. You won't find it.
Right there, right? There we go.
Benefits, yeah.
But it's got to say benefits or the educate yourself. See, like right here where it starts into something, try to find the one that says educate yourself.
Right. It's not even there
You
at all.
won't find it.
That website is not there
They
at
don't
all.
want people to know about
So-
it.
so-
And all of these, they're like trying to tell you the danger of it. The danger. Don't do it. Don't do it. It's like, but you can't find the educate yourself, the one that has the true information.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, so let's go ahead and type into the search benefits of H. It was already there. So
You already did it.
after therapy,
Same exact search that I did.
right? Exactly. So,
But you're not going to find that webpage.
but let's try to add the educate yourself title or at least the words to see if something else comes up. Did you go back to where you were? Oh, yeah, there you go. So yeah, just add educate yourself because that is the actual name of the website, educate-yourself.org, and they have all that information. So let's see if we type in educate yourself, if that even comes up. Okay, well, so it finally did it, but you have to do that to actually get to the specific one. It wouldn't serve it up.
But it used to be where, but they have it so buried now. It used to
Right.
be up at the top so that you would immediately find it.
Right. And that's what they've been doing, right?
They're
Selectively
burying things.
burying stuff down on the 5th, 7th page.
Because they know people normally won't go past the third page.
Right. Yep.
They'll jump to something else.
Wow.
And so, yeah, they are hiding things in that manner. That's why I say go to DuckDuckGo. You'll find information a lot faster and easier. But like I said, if you scroll down this or scroll up here, the main thing is, all these other sites, this goes into what happens all around the world, how everybody else uses it, and you keep scrolling here, and it gets down in here. I mean, this shows all the things that it cures.
Headaches, herpes.
Alzheimer's,
Wow.
herpes, anemia, HIV infection, asthma, bacterial infections, cancer, multiple sclerosis, cardiovascular disease, Parkinson's,
Diabetes. Wow.
Bars Epstein, emphysema, viral infections, just
Interesting. I mean, I think
shingles.
wow. Yeah. And that just hydrogen peroxide. You can find that at the store.
No. See, that's why it's so important. Is that if you went down further and scrolled down on this, it goes into. It describes here what's sold in the store is like a 3.5 or an 18%. I don't even think you can find the 18% anymore.
Oh, I see.
But the one that you actually use, it's a 35% food grade. And the deal is, see, the ones that are sold in the store, that is dangerous to you because it has stabilizers and toxins in it. It's not the food grade. The 35% is food grade. It doesn't have the stabilizers and the toxins in it, so it's totally different. You have to know to use this. Now, there's a lot of health food stores here in San Antonio that actually sell it, but when you go down here further, it goes through the procedure of what to actually do.
Wow. Yeah.
And, I've given this to a lot of people. Like I said, 2 people I can tell you right off the bat where they were diagnosed with cancer and they ended up to where they were told that they were very young. They were in their 20s, that they were going to die within a month.
Are you kidding me?
And
Wow.
act of desperation, they went and said, I'll give anything a try, whatever. And they did this, and within 3 weeks, they were free of cancer.
Wow.
And I've done this myself, but the thing that I always warn everybody about is on this particular thing is that there's candida, there's toxins that build up in our body throughout our entire life. Every time you're taking any type of drug, there's residue and everything left in your body, other toxins that are put in there. So when you do this, what it does originally is it breaks the dam, and all those toxins in your body try to come rushing out. So it's kind of like, imagine the Hoover Dam busting and all this water coming out. Well, when all these toxins are trying to leave the body so fast, you start to feel like you have the flu for 3 days.
You're sick.
You're not nauseous and throwing up or anything, but as far as the dizzy, the kind of like the bad taste in the mouth, all this other stuff, it's because all the toxins trying to get out. So it ended up to where the first time I did it, I was so dizzy after 3 days, I literally stopped.
Wow.
And I thought, I'm going to continue this, but I kind of freaked out because I did feel really bad about it, which is why I always want to tell people about this stuff before they get into it, because they have to know that now this will tell you that when it happens, keep pushing through, just keep doing it. But I was like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
It's like the work that I had to do at the time. I was like, I can't even walk down a hallway without putting my hands up against the wall.
What do you think it feels so bad to detox?
Well, like I said, it ends up to where when you get toxins that are leaving your body that fast, the body just reacts that way. Now, it ended up to where what I will tell, and what I always tell everybody else also, is that after that period, I probably waited a week, and I said, you know what, I'm going to go back and do this again. When I went back and I started it up again, I was able to finish the entire thing and build it all the way up to where it's like you're doing like 35 drops, something like that, 3 times a day.
3 times a day.
But anyways, it ended up to where I was able to get to that point. After that initial breaking the dam and me recovering from the toxins leaving that fast, I didn't have any side effects starting it back up again. It was just the initial dam breaking of those toxins leaving the body that made me feel like that. But going back and starting it again, didn't notice a thing.
Wow. So it just gets incrementally better. In the beginning, it's not as good. It's kind of like doing any detox program.
Well, it's, people know in the medical, this is another thing that they keep hidden, because there is no money to be made by people knowing the cures for diseases.
Right.
And so they keep all of this stuff hidden from everybody. But every disease pretty much results is that it's the toxins in your body, and it also has to do with the alkalinity in your body. If you can keep your alkalinity in your body up high, well, no disease can survive in that environment. But when it ends up to where the alkalinity goes down, your body becomes acidic along with the toxins, that's when you become ill. So the two things is that if you can raise the alkalinity in your body and get the toxins out of it, no disease can survive.
Right.
In fact, there's new technology and everything that'll be released also, which I'm really looking forward to, that aging is a disease. It's toxins build up in everything in your body. And
it makes sense.
And so what will end up happening is that we'll be able to detox our body and actually reverse and go back 30 years.
Oh, wow. Oh, my goodness. Sorry, doctors, and sorry, plastic surgeons out there. You guys have your days counted. You heard it here on True Talk. Well, let's go back to Q and the add-ons.
Mm-hmm.
So, who's Q? Who's buying all this? What's going on with this? I mean, people are just going crazy with this information. The people that believe it, gung ho about it, the people that don't believe it, they're gung ho about this is crazy. I read a couple of days ago that apparently they found the guy who's running the website, and then they took it down because of that. The QPub the QAnon QMap.pub. What happened with
It's
that?
actually different now. In fact, I don't know if you can pull that up. QMap.pub.
Let's try that. Is it really gone, Danny?
It's actually
Let's check it
it
out.
was gone for a couple of days.
Some guy in New Jersey.
Well, there's two different links in it now, and it's the way the website is brought up now is different format.
I see.
But it is still there.
It's still
It's
there?
just a different format.
QMap.pub.
MAP.pub.
Uh-oh. Let's see.
QMap is currently down.
Let's put it up
Does
here.
it say that? No. Okay, right there. Do you see what QAnon.pub? Q and these. And you can click on anon.pub.
So they basically
Did
put
you
other
click-
links to other websites. Danny needs glasses to see all this far.
So Q.
There
Okay,
we
yeah.
go.
See, there we go. It's kind of pulling it up.
September
on this.
17th, 2020. It's still happening.
And these are like, sometimes there's breaks in the drops. They call them just drops. Q drops some more information. But it gets very interesting, and it kind of ties everything together. And there's things where anons all over the world, they're smart enough to figure this all out. There's a language which is called gematria, a lot of the coding that's in there. You have to keep in mind that this is information that the good guys are actually getting out to people around the world. It is coded, but it's interesting. I mean, it's like there's things where, I was saying earlier, things can be posted and we're like thinking, oh, well, it's got this particular date on it. It's going to happen here. And it ends up to where it doesn't happen and go, well, what happened? Well, it ends up to where it's a game. It's a chess game being played with the deep state. And it ends up to where it tricks them into making a reaction to what they thought was going to be that particular day. But the information that was shown was actually like a 1, 2, or 3 year delta. It's very interesting to where something that was like posted 3 years beforehand and you thought it was going to happen that day, it ends up to where it happens 3 years later, that very exact day, on the very exact hour, the time it was posted. And you're going, how in the world did they know that this was going to happen on this exact day, 3 days later, at this very exact time? I can't explain to you how this stuff all happens.
In your opinion, what's going on? What do you think is happening? I mean, obviously, at this point,
this was a way, because the deep state controls the narrative, because they control the media, there was no way that we were ever going to find out or get information to know the truth, the Great Awakening, as it's called. And so ultimately, by coming up with this plan of this Q, these are people where, think that there's rumors that it could be John F. Kennedy Jr., it could be part of the military. We do know that there's like things which is like Q, Q plus, Q plus plus. Not sure who Q is, not sure who Q plus plus is. But if it's posted by Q plus, we know that's Trump.
Really?
We know that he's posting it.
How did you know that?
It's
there's
there. It's proven.
So obviously,
confirmations.
You can't just jump in and know what's going on. You gotta kind of follow it along.
You have to
understand it. You have to
some of
integrate.
Some of it is clear, where you can kind of understand. You do get cues of things that are going to happen, which are getting ready to happen. But other things, it is coding, because the deep state is very much aware of this, which is why they attack it so much. And if it's a LARP, why do they spend so much time and money trying to attack it?
Exactly right. It's no big deal.
It's a threat to them, because it's not just people in the U.S., it's people all
around
over the world
yeah,
who are
seen
awake and paying attention.
A lot
to
of the
this.
real protesters out there with actual, the QMap.
Yes, and you'll
Or
see this
QAnon.
where they're all over the world, different countries,
Right.
and it's just like they're all paying attention, so they all know what's going involved. Because the deep state, it's not just a United States thing; it's embedded all over the world.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
like what you were saying earlier, in corporations and Hollywood, politicians all over the world. It isn't something where people think it's just politicians. No, these are people who are upper echelon, who've been controlling and manipulating humanity forever.
Yeah.
And people are waking up. It's kind of like thinking, What made the queen so special to be born into this planet and have everything that she has, and yet we have to suffer for what we have?
Right.
What made her so special
Well,
that she had all
exactly.
of this and
I
we
mean,
have to do this?
Anybody who starts reading history or looking into real history, you realize that they created a narrative. Again, we go with a narrative that they have special power, or they can talk to the gods, or you can't, but we can, so we'll let you know. So come to our temple, and then we'll let you know what they said. And they probably said you got to die for this or something, you know. So it's just to me, it's just made up. There's no way somebody can just be better than another person when they're just a human being.
When you're talking about kind of religion in a sense, I have something to kind of wrap it up, you know, and when talking about something funny. When you're ready to wrap it up, I'll just say that
We'll save it for the special after
yeah.
the scenes, real
Yes.
stuff. Only us we get to hear that the good funny jokes, man. We don't want to trigger anybody out there on freaking YouTube land, internet land, all of that stuff. We're not trying to do that, but we do want to bring you enough information for you to realize a lot of this stuff, and we're bringing up a very small amount of what Mike Johnson is saying here, just so you can see that this stuff, he's not making it up. This is not.
Now, I will tell you, there's a couple video sites, you know, that people may want to like take note of. That these channels, great information. They are people who are like anons or connected with anons, so they break down the narrative and they actually explain it.
Perfect.
So it ends up to where you're going, well, this doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, go to these YouTube channels and then listen to them, and they'll start to put it all together, and you'll be going, oh, wow. You'll start to understand how ingenious this whole thing is. But a couple of those channels that I highly recommend is there's one that's called And We Know. And I recommend that you find that, subscribe to it, ring the bell so that you get the notifications on it. There's some other that's gives other information. I'm not going to go into that.
Give it to us, man. Come on, we are ready, and we know right here. So this is the channel.
Yes. And another one would be like, that's the channel. Yep, right there. But anyways, great information, and normally post on a daily basis. And of course, if you're like want to catch up, you can also go back and watch other videos and try to like bring the whole story together so that you have better information. Another one is Citizens Investigation by KDG. I think that's what it is. Citizens Investigation Report. There's so many of them out there, but these are some of the ones that I highly recommend. I like it when people kind of like get to the truth real quick. Does it say? I think that's it. Yeah, that looks like it's it, because it's got like this symbol right here. But it's by this lady, Katie G, and she's really good too. She's humorous, but I like it when people give like the reports and they get the information out, and instead of kind of like what we're doing, spending hours.
Right. They just bring it down.
I don't have time. I got things to do.
They
I
do
want
it
the
quick.
information, you know, and it's, you know, get it true and accurately. But those are two that I would highly recommend. And then from there, you know, you may be able to spread out and start discovering other things. But if you're new to this, you want to find out information, go to those two sites. You know, you'll learn a whole lot real quick.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say to people who are just kind of on the fence, a lot of people are waking up. It's obvious because
This is the Great Awakening.
I believe it. And I believe it because there's so many people that are, no matter what, you realize internally there's something going on. There's something wrong. Somebody's conning you.
Yes.
Everybody has the idea that politicians are not always 100% honest. Everybody knows that. But we're starting to see more and more, and there's more evidence that always points towards, hey, all this stuff has been going on the background
Forever.
And since the beginning of time, like you were saying earlier. And now it's time for people. We have the internet. We have ways to. That's why they're trying to stop all this on Facebook and YouTube and taking information down. But my thinking when I first started listening to this kind of stuff and conspiracy theory, what people say, is that why would people that are smart enough would spend time out of their own time without any specific real motive, that they don't want to be famous, they don't want to be on TV, they're not trying to so much do this or do that. They're just trying to put the information out there. Anybody with a half a brain would realize that, wow, this person is doing this on their own time and budget. Not only that, they're risking ridicule from the community or their colleagues.
Well, I did that for years. I
Right.
mean, I was speaking out for 20 years. So you have to imagine 20 years ago speaking out about things. Yeah, everybody thought I was a lunatic, but
Right.
ultimately what ended up happening. And people would ask me too, well, how do you wake people up? And the thing is what most people who are new, what they try to do is they start arguing with people. They start like, oh, you're wrong. And, then they start getting into a fight. It becomes very heated and everything. And then once again, the egos kick in, the defense kicks up, and nothing is accomplished by that. And so the easiest way to actually wake somebody up is to ask them hard questions. Just ask them the hard question. And then once you ask them the hard question, it's kind of like, don't argue, don't even discuss it, whatever. Just ask them the hard question. And then typically what will end up happening is they're kind of perplexed about it. And guess what happens? They start to go research.
Right.
And then the funny thing is they come back and they go, hey, did you know this? Did you know that? It's like, yeah, I knew that.
Yeah.
I knew that. Keep looking.
So
Keep
what-
looking.
what
And then
would-
they come back, did you know this? Yeah, I knew that. Keep looking.
What would be some of those hard questions, or what? Obviously, it depends on context and whatever you're talking
Right,
about. but-
it does. And so it's kind of like it depends on what you know.
Right.
And you're kind of like you're trying to wake somebody else up. And so it's
The
kind
subject
of,
they picked
instead of arguing over the subject that comes up or something, turn it around into a hard question. Present that question to them. It's just like you're not saying anything, you're just asking them a question. And so when they want to come back with some opinion, just no. Find the answer. But most people, when you do ask them a question, they're not feeling threatened at that point because you're not fighting with them. You're just simply asking them a question. And so even if it doesn't get answered at that point, typically the human curiosity is they'll actually start to go look.
Right.
And when they start to look, and unfortunately, because of all the censorship, everything that is happening now on Facebook, on Google, it's even going to get harder when it comes to Facebook in October. They've already said that beginning of October, things that are political are not going to be allowed to be posted. But the truth of the matter is
Here
well,
we
if it
go.
fits their narrative, they're going to allow it to
Sure.
go out,
The fact
as far as the deep
checkers.
state. But as far as, oh my God, it's just
What a
like,
joke.
Oh, big joke, It's kind of like, it is just a joke, It's, it's kind of like, oh, they spelled this word wrong, so it's false.
Oh, God.
It's-
Out of context.
if you actually read the stuff that they're actually coming back with to block the whole thing, it's ridiculous. But they justify it, and everybody else who sees the post, they just see false, whatever information. It's kind of like that's all they see. But some people can actually click on it, because it says to see the picture or see the article, whatever. But it's funny that if you get like the notification that you're in Facebook jail or whatever, that it ends up to where you posted some truth that people aren't supposed to know about. We're going to block
Right.
this, and stop posting this truth stuff. And it ended up to where somebody finally showed me the fact checkers, as far as how to block it, get it off there.
Right.
And it took me a while. I dug around in it, and I was like, I found it, and somebody was going, yeah, they're really on me. This girl said it one time. She goes, I had over 30 of them. And
Yeah,
I get
there's
in
a
there,
bunch of them.
I get in there, and I'm going, I had over 85, and they go, they're really on to you. But it ends up to where once you block them all, more come back in there, and it's kind of like the names they use, but there's always like fact check, and they put all these names and everything, and all these different people, and you realize, oh my God, all these people are like sitting there trying to block all the stuff I'm trying to get out because I'm a truther.
Exactly. Well, exactly. The same argument that some people use against the truther, so to speak, is well, if you're not hiding anything, then why are you worried about it? It's the same thing with this.
I don't worry about anything because I know the great things that are getting ready to happen, and it can't be stopped.
Well, there you
Period.
go.
So no matter how hard they try, they know that they've already lost, but they're still gonna like
Shooting the last ammo.
yes,
that they have, huh?
just create as much chaos as they possibly can while going down. But it's kind of like, hold on, because awesome things are getting ready to happen. Like I was saying, we're getting ready to go from the Flintstones to the Jetsons. People
Well,
just have no idea the great things getting ready to happen.
I love to hear that. I mean, obviously, we all want to have a
Positive.
hope for the future. So you
There's just-
see it happening well, huh?
Oh, definitely. There is absolutely no doubt about it whatsoever. It's like, yes, well, we have to go through a little bit of hell, whatever, because of these crazy people who have been like tormenting humanity. Yeah, but you know what?
It's worth it.
It's
going to be
going
worth
to
it.
be well worth it. The entire world will be celebrating. Humanity will just all come together. When it gets into this stuff about, first of all, the deep state. I want to tell everybody about this one tactic. If you're not aware of it, called projection. Are you aware of what that is?
I think I know what projection is, but
it's a tactic that the
it.
deep state uses all the time, and it's just daily. What they do is, for example, they'll accuse Trump of doing something. Oh, you're guilty of this, you're guilty of that. Well, they're the ones who are actually guilty of the thing that they're saying he's guilty of. That's projection. That's when you're guilty of something and you're accusing somebody else of doing it. So once again, through the echo chamber of that going on, people believe, oh, it's true, because they said it, they said it, they said it. It's like, no. There's no facts or evidence to it. If you went and did your research, you would find out they are the ones who are guilty of it.
Yeah, exactly. It would probably, all their arguments would fall down when you realize that they're all owned by a certain amount of corporations.
But you have to be able to think for yourself.
Well, you gotta exactly think for yourself and question authority, and check it out for yourself, because the information is out there. But people, I think, are just, like you said, they're stopping at a couple of steps from really diving in and thinking, hey, is this the truth? Let me check it out for myself, because people have enough intelligence in themselves to do it, but they have to exercise it,
and they have to get rid of their ego.
And they have to get rid of the ego, man. That's a hard thing, of course.
Very hard.
But I think that's kind of what they do it. Man, we are at 2 hours. We just got the 2-hour bill.
Well, let me just wrap it up here with
we're
talking about talking about religion earlier.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, I'll have to. It's kind of a little funny story here. I'm a joker when you really get to know me, but I was actually driving Lyft and Uber for a while, and kind of a funny story. There's a lot of funny stories of what happened at the time. Let me ask you this: are you Catholic?
Used to be, but I consider myself more spiritual now.
Okay, yeah, I was going to tell the story anyway.
Cool, do it. No worries, man.
You'll appreciate this.
No, if we get fact checked, that's just not a problem, man.
Well, there was one time I picked up this. I picked up this really small man from the Philippines at the airport, and I'm driving him off to Our Lady of the Lake. And on the way, he's sitting there telling me all these different places he's lived all over the world. He finally turns to me and he goes, well, Mike, the reason why I've lived all these different places all over the world is because I'm a Catholic priest. I looked at him and I said, well, first of all, I want to thank you for that good confession.
I know, right?
I said I was raised Catholic, but then I read the Bible and I got the hell out of there. He goes, it happens. I said, as a child, I wasn't that bad of a kid. When it came to confession, I used to go in there and make up a whole bunch of stuff, and at the end I would say I lied, figuring that I was covered. But the list of Hail Marys after contritions and Our Fathers was so damn long, I finally cut the list of lies shorter before I confessed I was lying. And then I said in this confirmation thing, I said, what the hell was that all about? I was made to take on a fake name, go in there, get slapped across the face, setting me up to have to go back to confession. I had him laughing so hard by the time he got out of the car, he looks at me and he goes, Mike, you're a character. I looked at him and I said, I'll pray for you.
Oh my God. He's like, I was going to say that to you.
Well, I also said something about stay away from the pedophilia. I just speak the truth. I don't care.
I know, exactly. At that point, he's just like red in the face, like, I got to get out of here. It's true.
The truth is the truth. It will always surface.
It will always surface, man. So I really want to thank you, man, for coming out here and being valiant.
Oh, I enjoyed it.
Just shooting straight from the hip and just letting us know what you think. I mean, that brain of yours is probably filled with so much more information. We could just... exactly. So I just want to invite everybody who listen to this podcast to really check it out for themselves. I mean, I think all of us that are out there trying to find the truth, we really want the truth, and we're not ego invested. We're trying to find the information that makes sense and that is really happening. And we check many sources to find the truth. And at some point, you develop this little habit, this little sense of knowing where the greed is, where the intent is, what's happening behind the doors. Yes. And if it's good, it's good. If it's bad, it's bad, and that's it. There's no other way to call it.
This is biblical. It is the Great Awakening, and it's just an awesome time to be alive. So those who are sitting there worried when they see all this chaos and everything out in the street, hold on, people. Awesome things are just right around the corner. Mind-blowing awesome. The whole world will be celebrating.
Well, awesome, man. Well, with that, we're going to wrap up this second episode of my show, True Talk. Great to have you, Mike, again. Thank you so much for sharing everything with us. And
you're welcome. Thanks again for the invite.
We will be forever now on the internet, so it's there, man. So whoever wants to come after us, come on, bring it on. Let's do this.
True talk.
True talk. There we go, man. Thanks so much, man.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it.